You feel fine. No pain, no fever, nothing obviously wrong. But somewhere inside the walls of your arteries, something may already be building. For most of human history, it wasn't. Today, heart disease is the single leading cause of death on Earth. Your ancestors, the ones who lived as hunters and gatherers, almost never died of it, not because they were lucky, because of how they lived, every single day, from birth until old age. So what did they have that you don't? Let's start with the part that breaks the usual story. For a long time, people pictured prehistoric life as short, brutal, and sickly, and in some ways it was harder. Childbirth was dangerous, a deep wound could turn fatal, a broken leg could be a death sentence. But here is what gets left out. If your ancestors survived childhood, their body often aged in a way yours may never get the chance to. Consider the heart. In 2017, a team of researchers published a study in a medical journal called The Lancet. They had spent years working with the Tsimane, a group of forager farmers living deep in the Bolivian Amazon. The Tsimane still hunt, fish, and gather much of their food, and they walk and paddle for hours every day. The researchers scanned the hearts of more than 700 of them. What they found stunned the medical world. The Tsimane had the healthiest arteries ever measured in any human population on record. An 80-year-old Tsimane often had the arterial age of an American in their 50s. The medical word for clogged arteries is atherosclerosis, the slow buildup of fatty plaque that narrows the blood vessels feeding your heart. Among the Tsimane, it was almost non-existent. Most of them reached old age with the vessels of a young adult. Now ask yourself something. If this disease is so common in you and so rare in them, is it really just aging? Or is it something about the world you live in? The deeper you look, the stranger it gets. Move from the heart to the bones. Skeletons don't lie. They quietly record what a body endured while it was alive, and anthropologists have spent decades learning to read them. The anthropologist George Armelagos studied skeletons from a site called Dixon Mounds in Illinois, where two different populations lie buried in the same ground. The older graves held foragers. The newer ones held their descendants, who had switched to farming corn. The farmers were shorter. They had far more cavities. They carried more signs of infection and more lines in their bones left by childhood malnutrition. The switch to agriculture, the very thing we call progress, pressed a clear stamp of decline into the human skeleton. Look closer, and even the teeth tell the story. Forager skulls are often found with full sets of clean, cavity-free teeth worn flat by tough wild food. Then farming arrives. Soft, starchy grain floods the diet, and the cavities appear. The mouth of the modern human is, in a sense, a record of what we started eating. That idea has a famous name. The scientist Jared Diamond once called the move to farming the worst mistake in the history of the human race. Why would anyone say that? Think about what foraging actually demanded of a body. Your ancestors ate dozens, sometimes hundreds, of different wild foods across a single year. Roots, berries, nuts, seeds, leaves, wild game, fish, eggs, honey. Their diet wasn't one crop. It was constant variety, forced on them by the seasons. As far back as 1985, two researchers named S. Boyd Eaton and Melvin Connor laid this out in a paper called Paleolithic Nutrition. They argued that your genes were shaped by this ancient, wildly varied diet, and that the narrow modern one is a recent and uneasy fit. When farming spread, diets shrank. People leaned hard on one or two starchy staples. Calories climbed, but nutrition often fell. And for the first time, humans lived packed together with their animals and their stored grain, which is exactly how new diseases learn to spread. So let's reconstruct a day. Picture your ancestor waking in a small camp at first light. There is no breakfast waiting, so they move. They walk out across the land, sometimes for miles, scanning the dirt for tracks, digging for tubers, reaching up into branches for fruit. The anthropologist Richard Lee studied a group of foragers called the Juhansi in the Kalahari Desert back in the 1960s, and he measured how hard they truly worked. The answer surprised everyone. They spent only a handful of hours a day getting food, and the rest of their time resting, talking, and visiting kin. Decades later, the anthropologist James Sussman lived among the same people and described a life with far more leisure than the modern office grants. But that work, light as it was, never stopped moving the body, walking, carrying, squatting, climbing, digging. Their bodies stayed in gentle, low motion almost all day, every day, across a lifetime. You don't move like that anymore. Almost no one in the modern world does. There is a scientist who measured exactly this gap. His name is Herman Poncer, and he studies the Hadza in Tanzania, one of the last full-time hunting and gathering peoples left on Earth. Poncer expected to find that the Hadza burned far more energy than people sitting in city offices. They didn't. Their total daily energy burn came out about the same as yours. But here is the twist that matters. The Hadza almost never develop obesity, high blood pressure, or type 2 diabetes. So if they burn the same calories you do, the difference can't only be how much they move. It's how constantly they move, what they eat, and what they are simply never exposed to. What were they never exposed to? ultra-processed food, refined sugar by the spoonful, flour stripped of its fiber, snacks engineered in laboratories to slide past the signals that tell you to stop eating. Your ancestors never tasted a single one of these things. Their food spoiled within days. It had to be found, dug, cracked open, or chased down. Sweetness was rare and precious, a raided beehive once in a season, not a fountain waiting on every corner. And there is something else they carried that you may have lost: their gut. When scientists studied the gut bacteria of the Hadza, the trillions of microbes living inside your intestines that help digest your food and train your immune system, they found something remarkable. The Hadza gut was far richer and more diverse than the modern Western gut. They carried whole families of bacteria that have quietly disappeared from people in industrialized countries. Researchers, including Stephanie Schnorr and Jeff Leach, documented this vanishing inner ecosystem. A diet poor in fiber and heavy in processed food may have slowly starved out microbial species your ancestors carried for thousands of generations. So now the real twist comes into full view. Progress made your life longer, on average, but it did not make your body healthier. The very inventions that fed billions, farming, refinement, mass production, comfort, also handed you an entire new category of illness your ancestors rarely faced. The evolutionary biologist Daniel Lieberman at Harvard gave these a name. He calls them mismatch diseases. A mismatch disease is one that arises because your ancient body is living in a world it was never designed for. Type 2 diabetes, heart disease, many cancers, chronic lower back pain, even ordinary tooth decay. Your body was tuned over hundreds of thousands of years for a world of scarcity and near constant movement. You dropped it into a world of abundance and stillness, and the body, mismatched, breaks down in slow motion. This is the part that should stop you cold. Your ancestors were not healthier because they were tougher or purer or somehow closer to nature in a magical way. Many of them died young from things modern medicine now cures in an afternoon. The point is narrower and sharper than that. The specific diseases that will most likely shape the end of your life, the slow chronic ones, were largely absent from theirs. Not cured, absent, because the conditions that create them barely existed yet. So what do you do with all this? You can't go back, and you wouldn't truly want to. The modern world saved you from the very things that killed them young. But you can borrow from them. You can move gently and often, instead of sitting still for 10 hours and sprinting for one. You can eat foods that still look like the plants and animals they came from. You can let your body feel real hunger sometimes, instead of grazing without pause from morning until night. You can feed the ancient ecosystem inside you the rough, fibrous, varied food it was quietly built to expect. None of this is a secret. Your body has been whispering it to you your entire life. You feel fine right now. No pain, no fever, nothing obviously wrong. But somewhere inside you, an older blueprint is still running, still waiting for the world it was shaped for. Your ancestors lived inside that world without ever trying. You get to choose, one ordinary day at a time, how far back toward it you walk.